Welcome, everybody. I want to personally welcome you to this very special episode of Brains with Brian, which is a monthly series where we talk to world experts in the field of neurology, research, rehabilitation, and music, discussing everything from digital therapeutics to rehabilitation and music and neuroscience. In each month, we feature a new expert who will provide valuable insight into these important topics. Our goal is really to help make cutting-edge research and insights more accessible to everyone, told by the individuals who influenced them. I am the host, I'm Brian Harris, the co-founder and CEO of MedRhythms, a digital therapeutics company focusing at the intersection of music, technology, and neuroscience to build interventions that will transform lives for those living with neurologic injury or disease. If you'd like to learn more about MedRhythms, please visit our website at www.medrhythms.com. And I hope that you'll find today's episode interesting, meaningful, and compelling. And I believe that you will. I'm really looking forward to today's guest, and it's my honor to introduce you all today to Marilyn Spivack. And Marilyn Spivak recently retired from her position as the Neurotrauma Outreach Coordinator at Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital in Boston, where we are sitting on the 7th floor of, actually overlooking the beautiful Boston Harbor here today. And this was a position that she had, that she recently retired from, that she created to match her personal and professional experience and skills in 1999. She began her involvement in advocacy in advancing care and rehabilitation and prevention of TBI in 1975, shortly after her daughter, Deborah Lee Price, was injured in a motor vehicle accident. In March of that year, it became immediately clear that traumatic brain injury rehabilitation, understanding of the consequences, long-term issues, support system, and resources were non-existent. And in 1976, her son, John Gary Price, was killed in a motorcycle accident. Her grief, frustration, anxiety, and anger turned to thoughts of focused advocacy. In 1980, Marilyn, along with her husband, Dr. Martin Spivak, co-founded the National Head Injury Foundation, now known as the Brain Injury Association of America. She was also the founder of the Brain Injury Association of Massachusetts. She was president and CEO from 1981 until 1990. Her involvement in project development, both in the private and public sectors, have crossed many areas and disciplines, which affect the needs and outcomes of survivors, families, and the professionals who are involved with research and clinical services across the continuum of care. From 1990 to 1995, she was an active advisory council of the Neurologic Institute for Communicative Neurological Disorders and Strokes, which became NINS under the National Institute of Health. And she also served as an advisor to the NIH. Her recent and current activities beyond her work at Spaulding includes being a member of and leading many committees here at Spaulding, at the American Congress of Rehab Medicine, the Mount Sinai Hospital for Rehabilitation Research Training Center, and the Brain Injury Association of Massachusetts. She has presented at numerous conferences across the country and testified at the Massachusetts legislative hearing on care for wounded soldiers. She has been a peer reviewer for many grants related to traumatic brain injury and has been on the editorial board of the Journal of Head Trauma Rehabilitation from its first publication until 2000. And she has also co-authored a chapter titled Advocacy, the Power to Heal in Brain Injury Medicine Principles and Practice. From 1981 until 1990, she developed and produced over 30 national traumatic brain injury professional conferences and seminars. Over the years, she has worked with multiple federal agencies within the HHS, SSA, Department of Education, Center for Injury Control at the CDC, and the Department of Transportation. She has worked with the corresponding congressional committees and state agencies addressing needs, developing services, and systemic change to improve the quality of life for people with traumatic brain injury and those living with disabilities. In the late 80s, Marilyn worked with the legendary disabilities rights activist Justin Dart in his tireless work and struggle leading to the 1990 passage of the Americans with Disability Act, for which she received an award for distinguished service from President George H. Bush in June of 1990. She continues her advocacy and work through numerous committees in Massachusetts and across the country. Her most satisfying is being appointed as a commissioner for the Acquired Brain Injury Commission. The work began in 2019. Now, over the years, Marilyn has been presented with many awards, recognizing her contributions to traumatic brain injury research and rehabilitation. And that list is very long and is really a testament to her work, including the prestigious Gold Key Award for Meritorious Service to the ACRM, the American Congress of Rehab Medicine, and the NABIS Legend Award in 2011. She's also been awarded the Robert L. Moody Prize in Texas for extraordinary service in the cause of rehabilitation medicine and research. And in 2010, Emory University and the Neuroscience Initiative presented her with the Courage to Inspire Award for her tireless advocacy. And recently, the Brain Injury Association of America also created a public policy fellowship in her name. In addition, we are sitting here at Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital in the room named in her honor, the Marilyn Spivack room, due to her, again, tireless advocacy over the length of her life and her career. So Marilyn, you're an inspiration, and it's an honor to be here with you today.
Excuse me, everybody.
Oh, thank you,
You
Marilyn.
can say when we first met.
Yes, and we first met, actually, we were just speaking this, that Marilyn and I first met actually when I was an intern at Spaulding just over 10 years ago. And I had the honor of doing some music therapy with her daughter, which we'll talk a little bit about today. So thanks for being here, Marilyn. And maybe just to get started, I know I mentioned a little bit in your background, but tell us, how'd you get started on this journey?
Thank you for that incredible introduction, Ryan. And I will tell you, when I started this organization, Ryan, as you know, 5 years after Debbie's accident, because I searched the country, and luckily I had some of the resources that I could afford to do that. And Dr. Sheldon Berrol, who was a very famous, well-known and well-respected neuropsychologist, used to call me the gypsy mother. Because if I heard about a program or someone who knew and understood the kind of specialized rehabilitation someone like Deb would need, I got a plane ticket. And for one reason or another, the programs didn't fit or suit Debbie, and they didn't feel she was appropriate. But you know what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you all a picture of Deborah and her dad, Martin Spivak, who is her other dad. I lost my first husband through an unfortunate accident, and that was shortly after my son died. So Marty came into our lives and took over being the most incredible father and supporter. And I will tell you that for my wedding gift to him, he helped me start this organization. We weren't married a year when I said, you know what we're going to do? He said, what? And the following week, we held our first meeting. So it took 5 years for me to decide on a Sunday morning, after she was expelled from a program that was to serve disabled adolescents. And the director eventually became one of our founding members, but he could not deal. He had no experience working with the specific behaviors that Deb had. So after he left, having breakfast with us, then I decided, I think I'm going to cry. And we were doing the dishes. And I turned around to Marty and I said, we have to start an organization. He said, what? I said, we're going to start an organization, and we're going to begin to pull together the people we need to understand and to help us build the advocacy that we need to find, and we won't find it because it's not there. I looked, and to create services and programs. Mm. And he said, you know, you're going to have not a tiger by the tail, you're going to have an elephant by the tail. Mm. Who are you going to invite? I said, I'm going to invite the people that work with Debbie. And I did. I wrote 17 people, and they were Mick Alexander, a neurologist, another neurologist at Heart, people who served in rehab. And I asked each one of those professionals, they wanted to know if they could bring wine or bring food. I said, no, bring a family. Bring somebody, because I didn't know anybody. Bring a family. And so there were about 15, 17 of us gathered in our living room. And I will tell you, by the time 4 or 5 o'clock came, we were the Massachusetts chapter of the National Head Injury Foundation. And I'm big on names, and I wanted it to be a foundation because it sounded solid and established. And by 2 o'clock, we were New England.
Mhm.
And by 4:30, 5 o'clock, we were national.
Mhm.
And that's how we got our name. And that was in April. By September, we had our bylaws, which I borrowed from the Autism Society and changed a few words here and there. I didn't want to be bothered too long with
Mhm.
bylaws. We had our 501c3 number. We had an accounting firm that I used in my business. We had a fabulous law firm that we also used in Boston, and that attorney stayed with the foundation for years.
Mhm.
So by September, we were good to go.
Mhm.
I went to my printer, and I owned a residential real estate business. So, and I formed a lot of organizations in my town, and I was very active in
Mhm.
building organizations and working on organizations. So I went to a printer, and I had 5,000 brochures printed and 5,000 silent epidemics. It was a little brochure folded like this, silent epidemic. And within that silent epidemic information was a graph, and with the statistics and data that I had pulled from the first report from NIH, the Neurologic Institute of Communicative Disorders and Strokes. And they were printing the latest statistics, first time ever, on brain injury, the data that was established by Jeffrey Barth, Larry Marshall, and a number of neurosurgeons. And we took the essence of that information and put it in the silent brochure, silent epidemic brochure. On the back of our membership brochure, I knew no one would pay attention to Marilyn Spivak, president of Price Ross Associates, a real estate agency. So I engaged my husband, who is chief of pulmonary medicine, infectious disease at the Boston VA hospital, and not really appreciated at that time by him. His colleagues 2 floors below were the base of the neurologic and neuropsychology mentorship in the country. Frank Benson, Edith Kaplan, and many others. And they all agreed because they really respected Marty and they really liked him. And they said, that poor man is married to this woman and they all became members of my advisory board, of our advisory board.
Amazing.
So with that credibility,
That's right.
all right, nobody cared whether I owned a real estate business or not. They saw those names and they were wonderful. That advisory board was wonderful. They led me in the right direction. Braintree Hospital was putting on their 2nd annual brain injury conference. Now, mind you, this is 1982. Up until 1981, there were only 2 educational conferences in the country, one at NYU and one at Santa Clara.
Can I pause you there for a
Yes.
minute? I mean, because it's amazing to hear the story and how you were compelled to do this and then building the right people and bringing the right people together to build this. But what did, from your experience and with Debbie, what did brain injury rehabilitation look like in 1975?
It didn't.
It didn't
wasn't.
exist. It wasn't.
It didn't exist. The neurosurgeon that took care of Debbie, he was chief of pediatric neurosurgery. And he was very tall, and he used to look down with very kind blue eyes and say to me, Marilyn, it is what it is. And you just have to be patient. And Debbie was in a coma for 5.5 months. She was taken to Mass General. That's another story. After 15 hours in a small community hospital in Gardner, she was coming home from a day of skiing. Which she was very good at, by the way. And he said to me, there isn't anything I said, wait a minute, there's an actress in England whose husband had a serious stroke. That's the brain. Maybe I should go to England. He said, no, you can't go to England. Yeah, I was desperate. All right, and they kept Debbie for a very long time. Now, mind you, timing. This I didn't realize till many years later. The timing of our starting this organization was right on the cusp of recognition that maybe a few people could survive. Debbie was 0.5 people who survived, and only because I got her to Mass General. Had she stayed in that hospital in Gardner, Massachusetts, she would have been dead by morning. If not by morning, within the next 48 hours, because they said to me, Marilyn, no, Mrs. Price, if you were a smart woman, you'd pray for her to die tonight. Because she is going to be a vegetable. And that's the word they use. She is going to be a vegetable. She's in a dark, deep coma, and nobody's going to get her out of that coma. Well, they were right. Nobody did for about 5 months. But when I moved her to Mass General, after calling my doctor, who was affiliated with Mass General, Mass General had just installed the first CAT scan in New England.
Wow.
That was in January.
Wow.
She went in March. In February, her neurosurgeon was one of the first to develop the intracranial catheter monitor. So right there, she was on the threshold. I didn't know that. I learned that later. But anyway, getting back to your question. Now, what's your question?
What was brain injury
the
rehabilitation like?
There wasn't.
There wasn't.
So as a matter of fact, to prove that point, she went to Kennedy Hospital, which was Franciscan Children's Hospital at the time. Fabulous place, and one of the few rehab hospitals for pediatrics in the country, down the street. And they kept her for almost a year. And she came out of her coma there. She emerged. She went through all the stages that Dr. Giacino talks about. Okay. And then when she finally did emerge and she could say a few words, I was telling Brian before we started how music is so much part of the rehabilitation process that we did not appreciate. I appreciated it, but nobody else did, and my word didn't really count for much. So when she was being evaluated by Dr. Frank Benson, who was critical in speech pathology and aphasia, the first thing she did was sing, she wore a teeny weeny yellow polka dot bikini.
First words.
First one. Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing.
Amazing. Debbie still has aphasia, and of all the things that trouble her, and she's so disabled, it's her lack of speech, which will bring me to a little detour. The lack of speech, aphasia, for people who have any kind of brain injury, and I'm including stroke, is not fully appreciated by funders. The time that speech therapy is allowed is so minimal that if someone lacks speech, it's impossible. So in the search over the ensuing years for appropriate rehab, landed me at Rancho Los Amigos in Downey, California. Okay, so off we went to Downey, California, which is outside of LA. And she spent 3 or 4 months there. And while we were doing that, was early 81, we started the California Head Injury Foundation.
Yes. Well, I think that's an interesting, as we start talking about the steps going forward, Marilyn, can we fast forward to today, the Brain Injury Association?
Yes.
What is the Brain Injury Association today? What is it doing? Who is it helping?
What is it doing?
Yeah.
Well, that is, that I brought, well, first, before I get into what the BIA is doing, I have to tell you what Massachusetts is doing.
Yeah, please do.
So Massachusetts found chapter really started at the same time as the National Head Injury Foundation, but we didn't.
Well, it was like
become-
2 hours earlier. It was the Massachusetts, right?
Yeah, right. Before the first glass of wine.
Yes.
So the, so we were wearing, we were two-pronged.
Mhm.
What actually, the first state association was in Indiana,
Mhm.
Chartered Association. And many of you in the brain injury world know Nancy Schmidt, and and Lance Trexler. They were part of that
Mhm.
beginning. But so the Mass chapter functioned out of the national office.
Mhm.
Now I was in Peoria.
Hmm.
Okay, doing a presentation.
Interesting place to be. Yes.
That's right. And if anybody doesn't know where Peoria, it's a city outside of Chicago. So, and we were sitting in, I think, a church basement, actually. And people wanted to know why the Mass chapter and the national organization were merged. I said, it's just because I live there.
Mhm.
Okay.
Convenient answer.
And the fact is, they were upset that the dues that they would have to pay needed to be split between National and Peoria.
Hmm.
So I said, if it wasn't for the people in Massachusetts, I wouldn't be able to be here.
Hmm.
But I went home and I said, we need to separate. We need to separate, and we have to create a separate chapter.
Mhm.
So we did. And their office was in Waltham and my office was in Framingham. So that there wasn't, I didn't want to hear that again.
Yes.
So now, what does the Massachusetts State Association is incredible.
Mhm.
And for those of us who live in Massachusetts, you got to realize how fortunate you are if you have an injured or very sick family member. There is no state like this state, and that's because of our government, because we have a legislature and that work beautifully together. We have a governor, whoever, whether he's a Republican or a Democrat, works beautifully with the legislature. And we have a very understanding Medicaid program under the name of Mass Health. I'm going to divert a little bit. When I came here, I took on this role at Spalding, who was my second home, actually. I love coming into this building. I took on this job in 1999. And one of the things that we did was take a 12-bed program and build it to a full floor. And I lost my train of thought. So where was I going?
Talking about what the Mass State Association does today.
Yes. So when we began the organization, I had to practice my advocacy skills in Massachusetts. Okay, because the last time I was in the State House, I think I was in 7th grade. I was not very politically oriented. I didn't have to advocate for anything except my business and my kids. So when I realized that I needed to understand state government before I could understand federal government, I had doors open for me. And Governor King was the first person I met through all my networking. And we were having our first dinner dance and our first international conference because I was invited by Tufts to help build that conference. And I decided it would be very nice to name that month, that October, Head Injury Awareness. And I don't know how I got into Governor King's office, but there was a picture in the first newsletter. And he heartily agreed to sign the test document that Massachusetts was recognizing traumatic head injury as Head Injury Awareness Month. And that happened every year since, until President Reagan, a few years later in 1984, 85, we went to him and he turned it into National Head Injury Awareness Month.
Hmm.
That hasn't happened in a long time, but under Reagan, we had that going for a while. All right, so I'm going to go back to the Mass State Association and what we've done. We've built an extraordinary organization. We have always had someone wearing our state label, the Massachusetts Head Injury Foundation, in the State House.
Amazing.
There hasn't been a week that goes by that someone from the organization wasn't calling on a senator or a representative. And they all know. So fast forward many years, under Governor Baker, he's amazing. I'm sorry, he's not running for president. But anyway, in 2010, we nagged the members of the legislature and the governor so often that he decided to appoint a commission. And that started in 2011. And I'm a commissioner. Do you know that?
I like that.
You like
Just
that?
Commissioner
Nice to meet you.
Marilyn. Yeah, see, I like this. I'm gonna start calling you the commissioner every time I see you now.
That's right. So this was just filed this week. Can
Wow.
you see that?
Hot off the press.
Okay, so this was filed, and anybody interested in reading this, it's an easy read. Maybe long, but it's quite understandable. You can get a copy of this, an electronic copy, by contacting the Mass Brain Injury Association, or look at the state government, massachusetts.gov, and you'll find it here on that website. And all you have to do is print it out. And it addresses, we've been working at this for a very long time. And one of the most special things about this is that we had hearings all over the state. And we listened to the survivors, we listened to their families and what we need. And we live in a bubble here in Massachusetts. And we certainly live in a bubble around Boston. And when I say we live in a particular bubble, some of us who live in the bubbles around the model TBI model systems truly live in a bubble. Okay. The problem is the bubble has only so much air. So if you live in any rural part of the states that the TBI model systems are, you have a hard time accessing those services. Now, to be a subject in the model systems is very, very regulated. Not everybody is even interviewed to be a subject. And I don't want to go into the details because it'll take too much time. And the fact is that in most, now there were only 16 model systems, and there's one information and dissemination system. So in total, it's 17. When I started my advocacy in Washington, there were no model systems for head injury. There was just for spinal cord. And I said, that's really a good idea. Why aren't we having this for brain injury? I'm a terrible nag.
And you made it work. You made it happen.
First we had 2, then we had 5, and now we have 15, and we want more. I always want more. My husband used to say to me, I first give her a finger, she wants the hand, then she wants the elbow, and then she wants the whole hand, then she wants the body. But that's true, because it's never enough. And we have too many people in this country that never see the likes of this building. They never see any rehabilitation at all. Their lives are saved in some trauma center if they're lucky, and maybe they're not so lucky. And then they're shipped home, or they're shipped to a skilled nursing facility that knows diddly squat about brain injury.
Now, let me ask you this, Marilyn, as you talk about this, right? So even if we talk about the highlights that we've even mentioned today about your career, you saw a need, you took action, you advocated. You saw a need with something else, you took action, you advocated. You built these amazing organizations. You've really coalesced in an incredible network around you. You know, you've been doing this for 50 years.
I have a PhD in networking and matchmaking.
I believe it. I believe it, Marilyn. But you know, you've been doing this for coming up on 50 years, right?
That's
and you recently retired, though I don't really believe that you're actually retired at this
Only
moment.
for my salary.
Yeah. You know, what keeps you going today? What
The need,
the need?
the need. My daughter still doesn't have her needs met
Mhm,
for the appropriate programs.
mhm,
And the need is so great. And the need now, in the past few years, have even become greater because of the healthcare system.
mhm,
Okay. When I first started in this facility, we had a 6-bed brain injury program. Now we have a 32-bed
Hmm.
program. It was larger in the older building because the older building had more beds. The length of stay was months,
mhm.
not weeks. Now you tell me that somebody that has a severe head injury can be rehabilitated, can be in an acute care hospital in a brain injury program, okay? Working now, they have PM&R and thing, and hello, Ron Hirschberg.
Hello, former guest on the show, Ron Hirschberg. Yes, shout out.
The fact is that they're trying to squeeze months and weeks of rehabilitation into 2 weeks.
Mhm,
And if somebody is in a minimally responsive state, they may get here.
Hmm.
They may get to our long-term facility, but they may not. And for one reason or another, they go home. And think about who's home? Maybe the dog, and they have a walker come in and take the dog out for a walk. So who's home? That begins a financial crisis that you wouldn't believe. There used to be skilled nursing facilities that were established to meet the needs of young people disabled. So that would be young brain injuries, stroke, spinal cord injuries, ALS, whatever. But they were built to fill the needs of a younger population from 21 to 55. You know what the case managers have to deal with today? I'm sorry, we can't. How old is the patient? 49, 52, 36. Our youngest patient here is 82 years old.
Mhm.
We can't properly serve them.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So you say, what keeps me going? It gets, in some ways, it gets worse instead of better. The last brochure that the American Congress put out, I called John Lindbergh, who you interviewed, and I said, John, I have to laugh because that brochure is so large, I could put it up as a poster.
Mm.
And I remember walking into Dr. Giacino's office and I'm laughing.
Mhm.
Joe, look at the massive amounts of presentations for brain injury rehabilitation. Who can access it?
Mhm. Mhm.
So when you say what keeps me going, my anger,
Mhm.
my sheer frustration, we don't have access to the expertise. We don't have people who have the expertise
Mhm.
in the places we need them. We have payers who don't want to pay.
Mhm.
We have Medicaid that gets stricter and stricter. Thank God for Massachusetts.
Mhm.
So when I talk about advocacy, one of the things that we didn't address
Mhm.
in the early days of the foundation, everybody was together.
Mhm.
We had, first I went to the professionals, obviously, and my rationale for building this foundation, I hate to say it, I'm sorry, but I have to say it, wasn't for support groups.
Mhm.
It was for education, training, public awareness, and affecting change in policy and healthcare. Support came absolutely in the beginning, But that wasn't what drove me. What drove me is the need to find somebody so that Deborah would be Deborah again. That's what drove me.
Yep. And if those last words that you said there, Marilyn, is not a call to action for people that are listening, I mean, I don't know what it is. And Deborah's lucky to have you. And I mean, when we fast forward to today, everybody that's had a brain injury in the last 50 years has been lucky that you've been here in the work that you've been doing.
But it's not me that's been doing it, because I'm the kind of person I am. Nuts, my family says. I gravitated to all the professionals and all the disciplines that Debbie needed, and I made them part of the organization. So when I did my advocacy in need, do you think that anybody would listen to me? What do I know about the brain? What do I know about the research? What do I know what I read and what I can understand, but I'm not the one doing it. I need the one that's doing it. I need them by my side to go to the agencies, to go to the legislator, to speak up, to give a seminar, to do the education. And if you think I drag them, I would call people from all over the country. I have an appointment to see Senator so-and-so, Senator Kennedy, Senator Harkin. I have somebody in the education committee, Major Owens from New York. I need you to come. I need you to come and explain why we need you. So it was the professionals in every discipline, from neurosurgery to vocational rehab, that came with me or came with others representing the foundation. You think I did that alone? Of course not. I had the help, the guidance, and the support of the professionals in the system.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But in any network like this, to impact change, you were the glue, right? You were the connector that brought it all together, which is
I was
amazing.
Fiddler on the Roof.
Right, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, as we it's hard to believe time flies when you're having fun. We're coming up towards the end here. I'd love to hear from your perspective, for all the people that may be watching this now, or maybe watching this into the future, who are brain injury survivors or their caregivers. Over your experience of your career, what's a piece of advice that you would give them today?
The piece of advice starts here. Actually, the piece of advice starts here in the rehab hospitals and the acute care hospitals and the trauma units, to make sure that the families understand that their stay is very limited, and they're going to need a lot of support, education, information, and guidance. And the only way they're going to get it is by contacting the Brain Injury Association of America. Wherever you live, they're going to connect you to the state organization, if there is a quality organization, because not all of them are, and they will give you help. Or they will call New England, you call the Mass Brain Injury Association. And if you don't know who to call, you call the BIAA, and they will tell you who to call. And that's going to give you the doorway. And speaking of that, I just spoke to Nicole Godair, who's our executive director. And she reminded me to tell everybody, particularly in New England and Massachusetts, that our state got yet another grant from the state, so that they're going to be able to hold numerous educational seminars throughout the year for professionals who treat.
Amazing.
Okay.
Amazing.
And we just got another grant. When I say we, I have to explain. The Mass Brain Injury got a huge grant from the state to expand our already large information and referral and social work system to the tune of $600,000.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Fantastic.
So Mass Brain Injury Association has become like a leg when any of the agencies in Health and Human Services or the legislature, and that's always been the case, they call us. They used to call me at the national office, and they still now, members of Congress will call the Brain Injury Association of America to get information that they need. Thousands, and now it's tens of thousands of calls and letters that we get. So it's a very strong and organization that can bring the best and the brightest to the need.
Amazing. Well, Marilyn, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the work that you've done. I mean, the world of brain injury is better because you're in it. So
Well,
thank
wait a
you
minute,
for,
and I want to say something to you, sir.
okay, okay.
What you have done to add to the systems of rehabilitation, what you have done in 10 years is the most amazing. And people need, now the next thing, and I don't know, Brian, if you're doing that, I know that you're making a huge impact in the world of, in corporate world, but you've got to make a huge impact in the world of insurance and payers, because people need to pay for this service. They need to be included. And whether you're using PT, OT, speech, what cognition, and we have a bill incidentally in front of the Mass Legislature to include cognitive rehab, music and the arts, music and the arts need to be included. Now they threw it out of the school system. Maybe they'll put it back in the health system. But you have done an amazing job. And I know that there was a saying, and I know it's late, and somebody gave Shakespeare the credit. I don't know whether Shakespeare deserves the credit, but whatever it is, it's the brain is the frail dwelling place of the soul. And the brain is the only thing you can't transplant so far. And it is the soul of the injured person that we cannot, who are not have a brain injury, can fully understand. You can replace a limb, you can replace a liver, you can replace the heart. You can't replace and you can't fix the brain. And we don't, those who do not have a brain injury can't understand what it does to the soul of the person. Music helps.
Sure does. Sure does. Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being
Can I
here.
kiss- can I
Of course, of course. Thank you so much, Marilyn. And thank you all for tuning in today. Thank you for being here with us. Keep an eye out for our next episode. We'll be announcing our next guest soon. As a reminder, if you'd like to watch this episode again or learn more about MedRhythms, please visit our website at www.medrhythms.com.
Everybody can reach me too.
Anybody can reach her
Yes.
too. Anybody can reach
Anybody.
out to her. And if you can't tell by her energy, she will respond as well. So thank you, Marilyn, so much. Thank you for being here as well. And thanks for tuning in.